So when we start practice, first we start working with gross selfing, gross sense of self, something that we can detect. I believe that at least most of you, if not all, have awakened through the two-part formula, or your awakening has been confirmed by myself or Lama Karl or one of our teachers. So this is a good example of gross selfing. This subject self, it's so gross that it's easy to see that when we affirm, when we use that affirmation, I, me, mine, it brings up the self in such a way that, you can't miss it. And this is the grossest kind of selfing there is. And that's I thought, that's the thought of meanness, deeply ingrained in our psyche. It's a thought. But then there are other thoughts, there are all kinds of thinking takes place in our mind on daily basis. So there are thoughts and emotions. But there again, we have these thoughts and emotions in Pemako practice we call object selves. So we have subject self and then we have object selves. So here it gets already with thoughts and emotions, it gets a little bit subtler from that subject self. So we have to, pay a bit more attention, be a bit more attentive to be able to detect and see through this form of selfing. And perhaps I would add that, as you know, some emotions are stronger, are grosser than other ones. So there's also like levels of emotions. You can have gross emotions, very strong emotions, and then you can have same emotions in subtler form. But nevertheless, that's what we have to do in order to progress, in order to purify our being, so that we can know our true being without that self-based confusion, without being deluded. So, subject self, object selves, and then we have the subconscious mind. Subconscious mind. So, until this point, yogic practice is quite easy because, subject self, that dictator behind our eyes, and all these object selves that, what I'm doing with my hands is indicating a movement, how, let's say, a thought arises from our subconscious mind. Our subconscious mind is, kind of located in our lower body. And that's why when a thought comes from our subconscious mind, it seems to come up to the surface, kind of come up to the head area. Sort of like when you have bubbles in Coca-Cola bottle. You see these bubbles coming from down to up. In a similar way. So, but it's exactly that bubbleness what makes it easy, because you can see, when you are attentive, you're observing, you can see a bubble when it comes. And then, of course, what I didn't mention a few minutes ago was that, the subject self, what commonly happens for people is that the subject self sits here inside the head, and then you have an object self, a thought come up, and what happens is that these two join. So there is me thinking or identifying with some thought or emotion. I identifies with anger. I identifies with some, thought or a memory that contains like a charge of meanness. And so they combine. And this creates our confusion and samsaric mind state. That's how it happens. I identifying with object, subject self identifying with object selves of different kinds. But when we remove that subject self, when we see through it, seeing through is what vipassana means. Vipassana is Buddhist meditation. So when that sense of self, subject self, no longer sits behind the head, still these thoughts and emotions come up. But because there is nothing here, they create less confusion because there's nothing for the hook to catch. Having said that, some emotions, let's say anger, anxiety, let's say during a panic attack, for example, it's so strong that it comes up and it actually kind of takes the seat where the subject self used to be. So it momentarily can assume that seat, take that position until that anger or anxiety subsides or until it's seen through. So I was talking about bubbles. So this I hear and these different kinds of thoughts and emotions coming up, they are easy to detect because they are kind of like bubbles. They have a form that one can easily see, like a three-dimensional form. I have here my dorje, my vajra. So just like you can see this thing, this three-dimensional thing, same thing with thoughts. It's clearly a thing. You can see the height and depth and width of it. Same thing with thoughts. So it's easy to use them for practice. But then there is subconscious mind or substrate consciousness. And this is where it gets tricky. Much, much more tricky. So subconscious mind is kind of like, I'm from Finland. And in Finland, for most of the year, we have a very dark gray or pale gray sky. We don't see the blue sky most of the year. So the sun, it's there, but it's blocked by several layers of clouds, usually 2 or 3. So there's no chance that the sun gets in the winter time. So that's a perfect analogy for subconscious mind, that it has 3, 4, 5 layers of different densities. Some of them are gross, kind of darker, and some of them are, light gray. Some of them are very light gray. It becomes so subtle that you might not even perceive it. But here the challenge with working with, when in your practice you progress from subject self and object selves to substrate consciousness or subconscious mind, at first you see these thick gray layers. And these are, by the way, the layers what people who are depressed, what they suffer from. People who are depressed, their problem is not busyness of mind or nervousness. They are paralyzed. And these thick gray layers are what cause depression. So, but when as a practitioner, as a meditator, you start working with them, first it can feel, it's so thick and it's kind of like getting suffocated a little bit, it takes a moment, takes a while to get used to working with that heaviness. But here you're not working with a, like a clear three-dimensional object anymore. It's more like a mass of energy, sort of like a heavy blanket that sits on top of you, makes breathing heavy, makes your whole being heavy. But then again, little by little, we keep practicing. We keep recognizing the natural state. We keep cutting through to the natural state so that we have this clear, pure, perfect awareness as the basis for our Vipassana practice. And in this way, we can little by little see through those layers, those gray layers. And finally, very close to the ultimate attainment of Buddhahood, with each stage of the path, it is a challenge to notice what to do next, because we need to enhance our perception. We need to be aware more and more in a more and more subtle way. So it's a challenge throughout the whole progress. But very close to the ultimate goal, like I said, you have this very thin gray, light gray layers that you might not even know that they are there. But when being attentive, when cutting through to the natural state of clarity and purity, then by comparing that selfless state with those light gray veils, that's how you can illuminate them, see through them. And that's how you become a Buddha. How long did it take me to explain that? 20 minutes. I was hoping to get that done in 10. But that's what we're doing. Do you understand? Yeah.